Hello, welcome back to Unrivaled channel. I'm Jacob Book Square, and today we are going to be doing a non-spoiler and spoiler reveal review of Game Changers as a series. Overall, there's 6 books, several novellas. I'm not sure if I'll read the little short stories of the extra couple, like add-on things. I think I'll read them if I like the couple. If I don't really care for the couple, I don't really think I'm going to read them, so just give you a heads up. However, I'm going to jump in at Jacob from a different day who can raise his hands and do stuff without showcasing where he works to come in and self-promo myself. So let's do a self-promo real fast, and then we'll jump into the actual books. Hi, how you guys doing? How's that Jacob? Is he doing good? I hope so. That being said, let's talk about Gunshot Residue. Starts out with this trilogy. We have P49, which is the second book in this trilogy, and we also have Mr. St. James, which is the final book in this trilogy. All 3 books are available on Kindle Unlimited. All 3 books are wide, so you can buy them anywhere if you don't believe in Amazon. However, the ebook is exclusive to Amazon. I will read you the loglines for all 3. However, we'll go into a little bit more detail what the first one's about, because you have to read this one to be able to read these ones, you know what I mean? But let's first go through the loglines. Loglines are simply just like the top part right here. I'm not going to read you any of this, just this. So the first one is your husband's secrets enough to shatter your world, which I feel like is a pretty good theme for the book. The second one, which is this one, is what are you really capable of? And then the third one, which is this one, is how far are the bounds of love? Essentially, this follows an already married couple, Alex and DeMarcus. They are currently going through some marital problems at the beginning of this book. They've been together for 5 years, and Alex strongly believes that his husband is cheating on him. He just has this feeling. There's other people in his life that are kind of instigating him towards this realization as well, and so he takes it upon himself to figure out if his husband's actually cheating on him or not. And he actually learns that there's a bigger conspiracy mystery going on that overspans 3 different books that has to do with his husband. Once again, they are already married. These are spicy romantic suspense novellas. They're very short and they're very fast paced, so you can read them very quickly. That's all I got for you. I love them, but I wrote them, so I'm biased. That being said, jump back to a Jacob in whatever video you're watching. Essentially, for a series overview, I'll link you to the playlist in case you want to see other ones of these. It's where I read every book in the series. I typically review the first book in a non-spoilery fashion or the series in a non-spoilery fashion, depending on how connected they are. This is an interconnected standalone romance series, so more than likely I will probably just review the first one in a non-spoilery fashion, and then the rest of them you can be like, okay. I sometimes skip a non-spoiler review for videos like this as well, because I find it kind of tedious and hard, because each book follows a different couple, and so you're like, do I just talk about them all in spoilery, or do I talk about them all in non-spoilery fashion? These are spoilery videos. This is basically me reading the series for you, and you can hear about the books, and then being like, oh, that sounded actually really interesting, let me go pick it up, and then stopping my review, and then coming back and finishing it. And the way these works is that it's going to be one long form content video. I'm going to sit here, I'm going to tell you the whole plot of the whole book, and my thoughts and opinions on it while I tell you about it. Probably a little disheveled, I'm a bit tired, so I know this one's going to be a bit disheveled. And then we'll jump to the next one on a different day after I finish that book, and so forth. No vlog formats, it's just me and the camera and my bookshelves behind me. Sometimes boring, but I think this is the best way to do a review. Essentially, it's just 6 mini reviews in a single video under the same subject matter. That makes sense? I hope that makes sense. That being said, let's go ahead and get started. If I do decide to put any type of non-spoiler reviews, this is where they're going to go. And for you as a consumer, do you guys prefer non-spoiler reviews in videos like this, or are you okay with just going full spoilers because of the type of content? Let me know in the comments down below. Now, obviously, these are all videos, all books. They'll probably have a couple in it that will probably pertain to a happy ever after in the end, because we're dealing with romances. That objectively is not a spoiler. Spoilers, in my opinion, the simple lines of like what the book's about and how I feel about the content in it, okay, for like a romance. How do I feel about the characters? Do I support the relationship? Do I think they should be together? Do I agree with the HEA in the end? I do agree with this first couple. I do think they should be together. They're a long-lasting couple? That's interesting. My brain didn't really think about that until I was getting done with reading this book. And I was like, oh, maybe they are a long-lasting couple. But let me back up. What is this book? What is the whole point of this? So this follows Kip and Scott. Scott is the captain of the New York Admirals, which is a hockey team. And then we have Kip, who works at this smoothie shop, and essentially he is a very openly gay person, and Scott is a very closeted gay person as well. And so Scott comes in, orders a blue smoothie or something along those lines, and does this several times throughout the week, or several times while they're playing, and asks him to make the smoothie in particular. They do share a little bit of banter, a little flirtation, and then they eventually ask one another out, which turns into a sexual relationship very early on in the book, and then it just develops to a more regularly paced relationship. The main conflict of the book is the fact that Scott is on the DL. Kip is having a hard time dealing with the fact that he is basically back in the closet, as he's been out of the closet for several years at this point. He's very open, he's very happy with how he is, and he's somewhat projecting this happiness, this closetedness, I should say, onto Scott. And I have a lot of thoughts and opinions on this, and we're going to talk a little bit about the sex scenes, because there's so many of them. We're going to talk about the plot, because there's nothing there. We're also going to talk about the characters, because there's something there. I did write a whole review on Goodreads. I don't write reviews. But I do find when it comes to subject matter such as queer love and queer happiness and queer relationships, I do think they need to be taken very gently. I think you can have messy relationships. That's not what I mean. I just think you have to come from a place of like a great heart. I do think, based on some of the stuff I've read about Rachel Reed, because I did read some blog posts, because I need to figure out if she was a self-identifying queer woman. She's never come out and said she's self-identifying as a queer woman. She does have a husband, and so one could just assume, not that I'm assuming, that she is heterosexual. That is perfectly fine. We love an ally. However, we're going to talk about why allies writing gay romances, in particular, especially straight women, could be problematic to the genre, problematic to what they could stand for, and what that could mean, and why books like Game Changer could be much more popularized over books. I'm trying to think of a favorite gay romance of mine. I'm tired. I'm gonna throw it up on the screen. Or this, which is written by... Oh, I just read one earlier this year, so I'll put that one up on the screen. This one, which I have seen very little traction of on the internet. Fucking phenomenal. Deals with the same stuff. Pretty graphic in its steamy stuff as well. Very well written steamy scenes. Part of the reason why I love the book so much is because how well written the steamy scenes are. And why this book, which is even from a more marginalized like person, because it's a BIPOC author who is queer, why that wouldn't be so much like leveled up or whatever in a marketing standpoint. It's like a straight woman writing a gay romance would be. We're gonna have those conversations today, is the point of this. But it is a little bit of soapboxy, and I did already do it, but I do want to do it online as well. But let's get through the whole essence of the book. They're together for about 5 months. Essentially, they go on several little dates, but mostly their relationship is in the bedroom, which is talked about because he's closeted. It's one of those things. And then also they have a few Skype dates and stuff, but mostly it's in the bedroom, and it's mostly in his apartment is the thing. And that is what becomes the whole emphasis of why they break up in the end, and the whole thing around it. And really that's the plot of the book. There really isn't anything else. Kip is someone who is like really into like history. However, it's a very glossed over point of the novel in my opinion. And Scott is obviously a hockey player. Yet hockey, outside of him getting slightly injured about 30-40% into the book, there really isn't anything else to say about hockey, because there's nothing else that happens in it. One of his team members ends up getting kicked off the team, and they end up bringing out a new person into this team. However, this is all very bare minimum stuff, so I wouldn't even say that these are things that we should be talking about in that regard. And so because they're so bare minimum, and because the plot is so tiny, and because a lot of it deals with someone coming out in a very public way, which he does end up coming out in a very public way. He talks to his publicist, or his publicist says, "You're a hockey person, you should not be gay, so don't be gay." Which I do feel like in a lot of these stories that is kind of like what it comes out to be. And then he tells like his 3 best friends who are very accepting, which is also like I would hope is a more common thing inside this world. However, I've read so many stories about actual athletic people, actual people who aren't athletes and stuff. They're coming out stories, and their direct responses are not nearly as positive. They do have a great change because they are showing that they can still perform and that they can still be a part of groups and stuff. However, many of them get traded off their initial group, going over to somebody else for whatever the reason might be. You do have a few people who fight for them and things. Like there's a lot of good stories out there, so I would recommend it. I think there's something to learn. And but those are like, you know, own voice stories. This is not an own voice story. Let's talk about just the relationship at hand. A lot of this relationship is sex. They have a lot of sex. So much sex. And the majority of the actual writing of the scenes is not really that bad. I actually quite enjoyed myself, especially compared to other female writers that have written gay sex scenes and stuff. However, I would say that the part that's not good is the sexy dialogue that's written throughout. There's a lot of lines, there's a lot of dialogue in there. It's simply in there just because they're doing it and they're just talking through it. Either one, I've never heard, or I don't think I'd ever hear a man say, or a gay man. I'm sure there's men out there who would talk like this, you know what I mean? But for me personally, I've just never experienced it, and that's all I'll say on the matter. And I'm not going to say that I'm really good at dirty talk. If you read my books and stuff, you know, you can always make comments and joke about it, because I don't personally think I'm the best at it. I think sex works beautifully in a story when you're moving two characters' stories aligned along, and or if you're working, or you're moving the plot along. Most of these need to move the plot along, at least in my type of what I want to read type of thing. I am trying to dip my toes into the other realm because I know other people like just to read straight smut, and I'm trying to understand that as well. This was just so much smut. It was just so much, and it did nothing for the plot. There's one remark at the end of the book where he's like, oh, his dick is good, so maybe that's the reason that's there. And I was like, yeah, basically that's all he's shown you. And then, you know, Kip or Scott also takes that into his own consideration and says, oh, because Kip's like, you know, I've given up my life for you, I've done all these things for you. They're like together for like 4 months. This is crazy. It's kind of like a typical gay relationship, but it's crazy. And Kip's like, oh my god, you're so right. You know, Scott's like, you're so right. You did give up your life for me, and I've just been kind of living my life. Being okay that you're stuck here in this apartment rotting away. And you're 26 years old. And, you know, so yeah, I understand that. And so he says, I'm going to come out for you, which is crazy. One, coming out in a high stress situation, such as like a sports person coming out, I feel like that is a much bigger deal. In almost all the stories that I read, they're always like, yeah, it's normally because XYZ happened and it was more I needed to do this, or I was going to do it myself. Or on the opposite hand is that I was practically out with everybody anyways, and I'm just making it public to anybody who doesn't pick up on the fact that I'm gay. Like, I'm just, and then it becomes a bigger thing because they're like one of the first few people in their sport. However, most people around them already very much aware. And so them doing it this way, where it's like completely closeted, no idea whatsoever, I feel like it's a little bit more as realistic as I was hoping. And that's where the other part of this comes into, and that is fetishization, which I think like is something we talk about quite a bit. And I think that's the difference, because I'm like trying to dance this line of women writing gay fiction, because like for instance, I have a book that will be eventually coming out called Project Sarah, where I do write from a female in a first person perspective, and I'm still, you know, I'm basically talking about it in a similar sense where I'm like, oh, do I know the woman's mind? No, I don't. I'm not a girl. I don't know a woman's mind. I do understand the want to explore other characters and the want to explore other things, and there was a point in time where I do feel more driven to write female characters than male characters. That point in time has slowly gone away as I feel more comfortable in myself. There's a whole conversation, a whole topic in that, in case you guys are curious. And so like I have sitting here judging something when I'm objectively doing the opposite of that, which is basically the same thing, is very hypocritical of me, and I do understand that. And so I am trying to find the balance, if that makes any sense, of being like, this is the reason why this didn't work here, over I've read books where it does work. But somebody who has done something very good like this, and even dealing with the idea of coming out, and it's even like a DL situation, would be the Charm Offensive, which I think does it better. I mean, it's about fame, it's a little different, but it's still practically the same, and it still comes down to some more consequences, but there's a lot more nuance and depth to those characters. Kip and Scott are very much like, I just want to fuck, and I feel like I want these characters to fuck. They have great chemistry, I will not lie, but they're very base level characters. I'm really hoping as we go further in this series, I'm gonna stop talking about this, and we can just like get to the actual deep end of this. Like, the next one's about 2 rivalries between in the sports. I'm hoping that there's more depth to it, there's more character development, there's more love and passion between these people, whereas this one has a lot of passion, but very little love. I would say this is a book about lust, not even people falling in love. It is explained to us very early on that Scott has never been in like a full-fledged relationship. You can tell immediately. Kip has been in several fledglings of relationships. I think the 1 month mark, they both talk about how this is the longest they've ever been in a relationship. And you can tell that as well. And I guess it does paint the picture of like, oh, this is full lust, and so someone would blow up their entire life for this. Someone would make rash decisions like Scott makes, where he doesn't take the time to understand the consequences. I mean, you should totally come out, that's not what I'm saying. But doesn't take the time to fully rationalize everything. I mean, the way he tells the public is they win the big championship that's in hockey. I can't remember what it's called because I'm tired. And then he kisses him. And so he personally this entire time doesn't want to take away from the team, doesn't want to distract the team, because he believes the team deserves this thought and this whole thing. And then he does do exactly what he said he didn't want to do. And I think that alone makes it messy writing. I want to very briefly touch on 2 other things we mentioned earlier, which is fetishization, which I think is a difference between a queer person, a queer woman writing gay fiction, and a straight woman writing gay fiction. I think we can all understand what the difference is there. And or if you cannot, I can explain it in the comments if you guys are curious. I do have an opinion on that, and you can tell me my opinion's wrong. It's perfectly fine. Your opinion is just as valid as my opinion, and everybody stands too. I'm sure I'm gonna ruffle some feathers with this video anyways, so I'm cool with it. And then you have the other one, which is slurs, and it still says it's still in the same ballpark. It's all in the same ballpark. In my review, I think I said it pretty okay about fetishization. Okay, so the third paragraph, we're not going to talk about the rest, but I'm going to read the third paragraph. Do you? Also, one last thing about this being written from a woman who seems just wants to celebrate queer love. That's one of the main things I took away from a lot of things I read about Rachel Reed in the little research that I did of her. However, I do mention that's only romances, it seems, as there's too much sex. Would I make this comment if written by a gay man? Like the book itself, the fact there's so many sex scenes, I don't believe so. But because it's written by a woman, I will. But if a gay man wrote this, it wouldn't seem like fetishization. And the times where I find this most egregious is when it's a closet nothing but sex story, which this is. And that is when you take two things that I feel like a lot of women fetishize, and that is a DL man and sex. And this is because I've read a lot of books, a lot of gay books, because for a long time there, only people who were getting published, and I didn't even know self-publishing was a thing when I was discovering all this, were straight women writing gay, very smutty books about people who were in the closet and basically exploiting that because they found it hot. This book, I feel like in ways teeter-totters in that direction because of the amount of sex. And I'm not saying you can't have a smutty book. I'm just saying that there is no level between the two. If we're celebrating queer love, don't we want good queer characters more than just our bodies? And once again, I don't know if I would be making the same complaint if it was written by a man, a gay man. I couldn't imagine a straight man writing this, but I don't know, maybe I wouldn't be making that complaint. A gay man, I feel like there'd be something more to it. I feel like the conversation would be bigger. I feel like we could be talking about more. I'm sure there's other books out there written by gay men where it's just straight sex, right? And there's nothing to talk about. And you're just like, why are we doing this? Hopefully it's written good. But most books where I've read where it's written by a gay man, it has a lot of queer sex in it. It's because there's a point to it and there's a reason behind it. And this one is just simply because these two people have nothing to connect over other than the fact that they find each other attractive. Which there's something to say about that. But then you have a character who is literally upending, who literally makes decisions for this man who he believes he's in love with, changes his entire trajectory of his life. I mean, he is a hockey player. It's well established that he's very much early in his game, or he's been in it for a bit now. He's pretty famous, and he's aging out, but he's not fully aged out. He has 7 more years of this, and it could change his entire career, and he had no plans of coming out, and then he does it, for this person. And the only thing we get from this couple is the fact that they're having amazing sex. It's complicated. Now, with that being said, like I said at the very end of my review, I gave it a 3.25. We need to move on. There's 6 of these books. Hopefully I don't spend 20 minutes talking about each of them. Jesus. I am excited to read the sequel. I'm curious to see if it's any different. I'm hoping that all of these are not just closeted men falling in love and then coming out at the end. I will get bored very quickly and annoyed very quickly. So we will see. Also, I just hope the sex scenes get better if there's so much of them. We'll see. Alright, that being said, I'll see you guys for Heated Rival. Also, if you're interested, I am reading these partially because I want to watch a TV show, but we're going to read Heated Rivalry, and I'll get back to you. Hello, I'm going to come here and update you guys. Today we're talking about Heated Rivalry by Rachel Reed. This is book 2 in Game Changer. I have been told that there is now 7 books, so if that's the case, just like any of these other series overviews we've been doing, if there's another book in the series, and by the last book I want to continue onwards, I will make a whole other video talking about that book. It could be in a vlog, it could be in 27 and 27, 26 and 26, it could be something along those lines. I have no idea. The author has a lot of things going on, so I don't even know if that book's coming out, but I had heard that there is a possibility for a newer one. There's a few tropes here that I think are going to become annoying as time progresses, especially because I think in January I'm going to finish off this series, and so I'm going to read 4 of these back to back about. And the first one we talked about, I had a lot of thoughts and feelings about. This one I don't have as many because I really enjoyed my experience. Shane and Izatov were 2 amazing characters, and my biggest issue with the first book is that Kip and whatever his boyfriend's name is were not very well developed. However, this is a different book, and these characters are extremely well developed. So this is a rivals to romance between, Shane Hollander and Isla is the other one. Essentially, they meet. There's a prologue that shows them together already. So it starts off with a pretty intimate scene. Unshocking. These are extremely spicy books. Yet this has much more plot than spiciness in it. I would say the spiciness takes over the back half of the book. But the first 2/3 is extremely plot heavy, which is very refreshing for me, as I think the spicy scenes are somewhat well written, depending on what we're talking about and depending on what's going on in the scene. Not everything works either. There's a few things in here that really don't work, which we are going to talk about. It's going to get awkward, but I have to talk about in order to explain my rating at the end, because I'm going to say a lot of praise. I love a book that crosses a lot of time and does it very beautifully. This is a book that crosses 8 years of their relationship or 7 years of their relationship, because we're having to explain this rivalry. We're having to explain these back and forths, and they have so much sexual chemistry as teenagers, and I think they're like 18 or 19 when they get drafted in, and they meet really early on. They're the two highest persons in that draft, and then they just slowly build up, and you're slowly building up, and you get to see like the coming out of a different hockey player from the first book. Once again, I cannot remember his name. Scott, as he kisses Kip at the game, and that changes their relationship as well. So essentially, for a lot of the time, they're meeting at this like apartment building that Shane owns. Isla is also Russian, and so in Russia, obviously you cannot be gay, and that's still very much a prominent thing. His dad has a lot of issues against him, and his home life is very bad. We do spend a period of time in Moscow, so we do get to see a little bit about that. However, it's the lowest level. This is also a book where the first book was dedicated to strictly just a gay romance. These do have female sexual encounters in them. The actual encounters themselves are not on page. However, they are graphically talked about, so if that is something you don't like in your gay spot, this might not be for you. However, it's so fleeting. Maybe it is. There's also a conversation about like one getting married to one another and then becoming beards and then getting together because of the beards or whatever. They figure out solutions. This is also a book where they do not come out of the closet. Not that that's a bad thing, not that you can't stay on the DL forever. However, this does seem like it's the main antagonistic issue for their second romance, which is book 6. So we'll come back to them in the future, don't worry. So like I said, a course of 7 years. They jump between hockey teams. They're pitted against each other in the hockey league. Essentially, these are the two big rivalries. Everybody wants to see them go at each other. Everyone wants to see them, the whole 9 yards. And so when they do, people get really excited about it, and so they don't believe that they're gonna ever want to be accepted because they're fucking. Both of them take a long time to understand each other's feelings. For instance, this is another finding one's sexuality in something else. I guess the first one didn't have that. Kip was very open, and Scott, by the time Scott was with him, was also pretty open in the sense of like he knew what he kind of wanted, but he was still very vague about it. Shane, at the very end of this book, has no idea what he wants, and he doesn't understand his attraction. We do learn that Isla is very familiar with the man's body and is very much okay with his attraction. He's questioning it because of other, like, him being Russian and stuff, and there's like a lot of negatory things towards that and stuff, but he doesn't spend a lot of time there. He spends a lot of time in other places. This character also is briefly mentioned in Game Changer as well. Isla he's on the Boston team with Scott. He goes to the gay bar. There's like a little funny interaction, and I had a feeling this is because they mentioned it's just they really call him the Russian really throughout the first book, and I had a feeling this is who that character was because of the fact it's talked about and campaigned for the television show, which I've only seen like bits and pieces of. It is very true enemies to lovers in a sense that they do hate each other for the majority of this book, and so that's something you're looking forward to in that type of relationship. This is also for you. I think it's done beautifully well. They're so deeply in love with one another that you can tell very early on. However, their hatred is extreme. So like it works in both camps, and it's like one of the better ones, and that is because of the increasing amount of time. It feels very refreshing. It feels very new. A lot of my issues with the first book is that everything happens so quickly and so fast that like the actions that were taken don't make a lot of sense. Whereas this is almost like the direct opposite of that, where everything happens extremely slowly, which is beautiful. Oh my god, I love it so much. They're together for all of it, but the actions, when they start to happen, when Isla trusts Shane a bit more and allows him, and then, goes to his place for the last 20% of the book, and they're just hanging out and they're just living. And when they go, he gets injured and he goes to the hospital. All these moments do build up very beautifully and very organically because we see them through a course of so long that we know how they're feeling, and it's very true and it's very open. And so that way, this book stays better. The characters are better. The writing is also a bit better. The cringy sex dialogue is still very much cringy. However, it's not as bad. So I think it's a lot more enjoyable. There are a few things that I didn't like. The first one, we'll get the obvious one out of the way, and I'm hoping that this is not a common trend. This is once again a way that I just don't think needs to be in a book like this, and that is them talking very much about them, like her using a slur. Once again, I don't know the sexuality here. However, the particular slur that is being used is very much oriented towards gay men normally. I mean, obviously queer men as well in general can also be called this slur. We all know what I'm talking about. But it's mostly predominantly used to insult gay culture and gay men in particular. And I don't like it when women use it. It made me uncomfortable. And the fact that it's used as a throwaway line to say, oh, this is what people think. And she also uses cocksucker in the same like vein. And I'm like, cocksucker is a perfect example, and I feel like it's perfectly fine. Like, it's bad because of the context, obviously, but it's perfectly fine in the sense you didn't use the other word. We all understood. Like, the context was there enough, and it makes me uncomfortable, and I hope it's not a common theme. I'm hoping that as we progress, that this language gets taken out. Yeah, I just really hope the language would get taken out. The other thing is, I really hate it when females write bottoming for the first time, and that's all I can really say on that, but it does irk my nerves quite a bit. So this one had one of those scenes, and it irked my fucking nerves, and I wanted it to end as soon as it began. The other reason why I gave it 4.5, those two particular things is the reason why it was not it was originally a 4.75, and then because of the scene that I was talking about that happens pretty early on in the book, and then the slur comes in and I'm like, I gotta dock it another 0.25, so it's a 4.5. That's where I land. I would highly recommend this. I'm excited to read the next one, and I will come back to you when I do, but it's just gonna be a minute because I'm in the middle of December and I'm not reading it until January, so. I don't have a lot to say about this one, but let's go ahead and talk about the third book in the Game Changer series, which is called Tough Guy. This follows Fabian and also follows, I want to say his name is Ryan. He's on the cover. He's the one who's in the hockey gear. Big bulky guy, and he's gay, and he's pretty out as well. He decides to become really out by the end of this book, but his type is different from everybody else's. He likes the more feminine guys, more twinkish style guys who wear makeup and, dress up and stuff. And he's always had a crush on Fabian, who he knew when he was a teenager. And so he ends up going back to Ontario. He gets traded around a lot. He comes back to Ontario where Fabian's at, and they end up in a relationship. This relationship is pretty good, except for Fabian is extremely against hockey and everything about hockey. Like every single thing about hockey. He has a great respect for Ryan. However, Ryan by this point in his career is also done with hockey. And so by the end of this book, Ryan ends up quitting hockey and Fabian and him end up living happy ever after. Like I said, I gave it, I want to say it was a 4, right? I gave it objectively like a 4. Yeah. And some of the sex stuff made me a little bit uncomfortable. Some of the way they talked about some of the things also made me uncomfortable, but I really liked the relationship by the time it began. I don't think it's a perfect friends to lovers either, but they are so sweet and they're so kind to one another that there is something to say about it. Brian also has a lot of sexual anxiety, and so I really liked the exploration of that. A lot of these things I just wish could be explored better if done by an voices, because there's certain things I just necessarily agree with. By own voices, I mean actually just like a gay man, because I think some of this stuff is pretty Pacific. Most of it I think is fine. So I don't have anything really else to say. Sorry this is your favorite one out of the entire series. I can understand why. It's very short though, and it feels really short. That's also another takeaway. I was like, oh, it's over? Okay. Once the third act, like once they break up, because Ryan's not going to leave hockey, and it's like the big third act breakup thing, they're only broken up for like a chapter or something. It was really short, and I was kind of shocked by that. Normally I come in here when I finish a book, but I figured it'd be kind of fun to come in here while I read the book instead. Changing these series overviews. Honestly, I'm changing how I'm doing them entirely. This is one of the last few that I can think of off the top of my head. I mean, I have a few that I've already filmed that I've not posted yet, and then I have like a 2 or 3 ongoing that I guess I'll just flip over to the new format that I think I'm gonna like better. I think you're gonna like better. No one's complained about me just recapping a book. However, I have gotten people been like, ooh, I wish that I got more details from you, because like there's certain books that just come in one ear out the other, or like I read and I kind of forget most of the plot by the time I sit down, if I don't sit down the next like 2 days after I finish it. And so we're gonna change the way we're doing this. This is the first book that we're implementing this change into, which I think is fine. There's 3 books that I did the old way and 3 books I'm doing the new way, so just tell me which way you preferred if you're gonna watch the entire video. So the next book is Common Goal, I think is what it's called. This is the 4th book in this series, and I will have to binge read these as people want to read them. Unshockingly, this became quite a phenomenon while I've had them in my hands. It took actually longer than I expected for it to become so big. With that being said, the book itself is this is about our Eric. Eric is a character that we've seen before. Both these characters are characters we've seen before. But Eric and Kyle. Eric is the hockey player. He's the goalie. He is someone who is probably getting ready to retire. He's 41. This is a age gap forbidden romance because of the fact it's age gap. That's the reason why it's forbidden, at least in his mind. I feel like once again we are playing with a few taboos. I think the thing here is that the main character is pretty sure he's bisexual. He's pretty well known. We meet the character in Game Changer because he's close to Scott. He becomes Scott's like second number one, he tells Scott that he's gay, or Scott tells him that he's gay first, type of thing. He is happily married, and it's pretty well established that they got divorced. I don't think he was in like the happiest relationship in that book, if I really can't remember. And I don't think I talked about him, so I couldn't go back and watch my review to get the information. I really didn't like that book. It's not really that shocking. And the whole gist of here, this one is Scott and Kip are getting married, and so the book begins with them going out to a bar to celebrate the engagement. And we learn really early on that Kyle has been in love with Kip, which we already knew that. Kip and Kyle got into a kiss that I kind of felt like was a little crossing some lines. I don't think I understood how young Kyle was when the kiss happened though, and so it has changed my perspective just like a tiny bit because of that evolution. He's 18. Probably when he kissed Kip, he was probably like 17, 16 and a half, which is crazy because he is a bartender. That's the part that's like shocking to me because he's 18. But it's fine. He's an interesting 18-year-old. He has a sad backstory that's well established, which we'll talk about here in a second as well. I read about 40% of this. So they end up meeting at this bar. They've seen each other multiple times. The hockey player automatically takes a liking to Kyle. He's older, and so there is like some type of predatory way, but he comes off very sweet. So in my head, it doesn't come off that way. However, you can read this however you think is the right way to read it. He flirts with him. Kyle is flirting with him, and so he just kind of picks up on these vibes. By the time they leave that night, Kyle's basically rolled him off because he has a wedding ring on, because he's never taken the wedding ring off, and so he doesn't want to be another older man's gay fantasy for a night and get his heart broken or whatever. So he writes him off. Time progresses, and we learn a little bit more about Kyle's backstory. Kyle is living with Kit's old best friend. They end up living together, and he is pretty estranged from his family because of an event that happened. He ended up in a relationship with and it blows up in his face and it ruins the marriage, and it comes out because the mom hires a PI or whatever, and the whole thing, and that's how he comes out of the closet. His parents aren't pretty accepting of him. They understand that like he's a little different, how he puts it, and then he gets shipped off to where the whole entire story takes place. When he gets shipped off here, they pay for the place. He's going to school for art major. Art is a very big part of this book, which is cute and fun. The hockey player is really addicted to art. He takes photos, and he has this massive house that's full of art, and that's one of the big things that they bond over. But this hockey player becomes kind of like infatuated with this person, and so he ends up throwing a party where everybody comes over to just kind of throw a party, and they're both talking about one another, and they both interact almost the entire night together, have a great time together, sleep in different beds. Hockey player jerks off about him, and the other dude does not, and they are actively flirting with one another, and now it's turning into like a situational ship. We haven't got there yet, but he's gonna take him out to some clubs tonight and see if we can get him a little rowdy, because he came out to him. He said, "Oh, I'm bisexual. I've never told anybody that." And he's like, "Oh, that's kind of weird. You told me you're bisexual. I don't know you." It was how I read it. But I want to totally help you discover yourself, and also like haven't been laid in like a minute, so like probably both good at this. Maybe he's like 20. They made a comment about him being 18 like 3 times though, so I don't know. This is gonna get really graphic. I just don't know when. And it's gonna get like graphic for too many times. Like that's the thing, is that like here recently with the later books, it's like the last 2 books, this book and the last book, it's been like a lot of slow burn, and then it's like, oh my god, it's nothing but sex. So I'm kind of waiting for the coin to flip. I'm assuming it's gonna be about the halfway mark. That is where we're at. So I just want to come here and update you. I'll update you probably tomorrow when I finish it. I can't imagine myself not walking out tomorrow, not finishing it, or getting really fucking close, so we'll see. Alright, I figured I'd come here and update you guys. I have read probably up to like the 80% mark in Common Goal. I don't really know how long that is in this book. I'm going to have to put some assumptions on to kind of figure it out at this moment in time for the characters and for like the plot and stuff. It's fine. Maybe even like 20% ago, I was like thinking it's a 5-star. And then the book became very sexual. They've had several different sexual situations. And I think the biggest takeaway I've had so far is I wasn't expecting the sexual dynamic to be so interesting. However, I would have to say with the previous books, I didn't mind the dirty talk. The dirty talk here is god awful. It's some of the worst. And it's really taking me out. It's making me have a hard time just like enjoying the book in general. Anything to do with the sex life is making it really hard. Also, I can't figure out there is going to be a 3rd act breakup. This is a weird thing. They're in a situational ship, so it's not even like a traditional like relationship type of thing. Because we're not in a typical like relationship, and they're just like having sex and trying things out. They both have have this common error is that, like, Eric, who is the hockey player, doesn't want to date anybody younger than 30 because he feels like it's predatory, even though he has, like, these really strong feelings towards Kyle. And Kyle, on the other hand, is someone who doesn't want to date older men. He doesn't only date older men. In the last clip, I was like, oh, I think he's 18 because they keep saying 18. He was 18 when he got taken advantage for the first time by a man that was, like, 45, around his age. And this man was married. It was, like, a whole situation. Eric hears this story, feels really concerned, but also is like, oh, I'm that dude. I'm the predator in this situation, basically. So I can't be with this man. And then they proceed to have sex, like, almost like 3 seasons later for the first time. So, like, I'm a little mixed bag on the situation at hand. And I'm just like, I don't know. It's just not working for me. The relationship itself is working for me. I think they're very cute together. I don't care about any of the spice. None of the spice is working. We're wrapping up to the finale, and so this is about the time where the third act breakup would be, but they haven't actually officially even got together, so I don't know. And then there's like this like tension build thing. I'm over this, by the way. So I think I learned about myself in the same way as I'm trying to expand tension in my own writing for romance, for future romance books I'm writing to kind of help with this. Reading wise, I am like a low tension type of person. I don't mind if the characters are not together for like the first like 50%, but by the time we hit the 50% mark, get over your shit and get together. I get so annoyed. And so like I'm beyond annoyed. These are great reasons why they can't be together, but I'm just beyond pissed. I'm just so frustrated, and the sex is bad, and so there's like nothing I can look forward to. There's nothing I can look forward to. I'm not sure. It does feel like it's ramping up to possibly be some type of third act thing. They're finally sleeping in the same bed together, except they had penetrational sex for the first time. And there's not as many sequences as previous books, but they're very long. Oh my god, the dirty talk. It's so bad. Also, there was a word, I'll just say probe was used in a sentence, and I just like, oh, you cannot use probe when talking. That's where I'm at with this one. I hope you guys are fine. I'm so sorry, but I'm not liking it. The sex is so bad, it might be like a 3.75, and like 20% ago, I thought it was going to be a 5-star read. We'll see how it wraps up. It could be a 4, 5 that's out of the question. I can't rate this a 5. I just physically cannot. And I don't like it as much as I like Shane and Iliad or the previous couple as well, Ryan and Fabian. I think I like both of them much better than this. And I already clocked who the next person is going to be, because there's like this moment where Ryan, before he retired, he worked with this person who was like a dick, super homophobic and stuff on the team, big deal. And there's another teammate who I didn't clock at the time, Troy, who is the 4th book or the 5th book. And I was like, oh, that was a gay look. I wasn't there, didn't see it in person, but it was a gay look. I was like, is it Troy? And I looked it up and it was Troy. And I was like, cool. And that being said, we'll come back when I finish it. Have read the next book, and we started the next one after it as well. So the next book, or I finished the book, which was Common Goal. That's correct. This is Eric and, oh my god, what's his face? Eric and whose story? My gosh. Eric and Kyle, this is the age gap romance, and I left you probably like 60-70% into it. They do it in a relationship. They end up telling each other they love each other. They have sex for the bottom for the first time. Hold on, yards, the whole typical like Rachel Reed scenario of it all, and he ends up coming out to his he doesn't end up coming out. I was about to be like, he ends up coming out. He kind of does. He tells a few people that he's bisexual, but it's not like that big of a deal, like, if I'm gonna be honest with you. And so it's more about like he's retiring. A lot of people are upset about this. He ends up in a relationship with Kyle. We see a flash forward where he is in a relationship with Kyle, a little cute little epilogue, and they end up choosing one another. There is a breakup moment where they're separated for like 3 weeks. However, it's all off page. So essentially they break up for a third act breakup, and then get together because they are together for like 2 days, and then they break up, and then they're together for the rest of their lives. And that part pisses me off, because I personally don't think either of them need to go away from one another. I feel like a third act breakup makes sense when both characters equally are not getting what they need from this relationship. However, they both deeply love one another, and so they know when they break up, they can come back to one another. Okay, because that's the whole point. You need to be sold on a breakup. This is not a book that needed a breakup. This is a book that just needed an HEA the whole way through. And not every book needs a third act breakup. I've been talking about it. I'll talk about it again. A third act breakup is important for certain stories, but not every story is that story. And this is one of those books that just, it didn't need to exist. And so we are following, like I said, they end up together. It's very beautiful. Whole 9 yards. That's all I really have for you about Common Goal. I have started Role Model. I read a book in between this and Role Model, but I have started Role Model. I probably will get pretty far into it tomorrow is my best guess. This follows Troy, who we thought was going to be the case. I'm only 5% in, so I only have like kind of like the gist. I have the two characters who are going to fall in love, and we'll talk about them. Essentially called out Dallas Kent, who is the extreme homophobe, racist person that's been talked about throughout all these books as the villain of the series. He is now being called a rapist. This book has already told me that we're going to talk about it in graphic detail, just not being shown it. I don't know if that's because we're going to talk about even deeper than this. It's also pretty well known that Troy is gay. He's not like fully out of the closet, but he's pretty much like openly out of the closet. He's had boyfriends before. He just broke up with his latest boyfriend of 2 years because of this entire situation. In comes Harris Dover, who he gets moved over to Ottawa, which is his team. We have Harris Dover, who comes in, and he is the person who's taking all the photos. He is the one with the camera on this cover. And they have like a flirty back-to-back. However, he's very openly gay. Like, he has pins. He's very like, I'm queer and I'm here to show it. I'm here to show everybody that I love myself and no one can talk down upon me whatsoever. And Troy gives him this look of like, oh, I don't like you because you're gay. In reality, it's, I don't know how to feel because I've never been around people who've been so openly about their sexuality before. So how am I supposed to like react to this? And so he takes it in a completely different light. It's a whole thing. It's a back and forth. And so I'm curious to see kind of where it goes. I don't know. I'm kind of excited. I'm a little annoyed that the next one is a sequel. And so in this video, as this entire thing progresses and ends, we will talk about what order I think you should have read them in, because I have a feeling it's gonna be a different order than what I'm reading them in. We'll see though. We'll see. I'm gonna probably go with timeline order, which does make Rivalry very complicated because it covers so many years. It's fine. I still think Kip and Chain story should have been like a novella. I don't know. I fucking hate it. Okay. Anyway, I'll update you when I'm a bit deeper into role model. I'll give you a check-in and talk a little bit about it. I've had a fucking day today, but you guys deserve an update on role model I'm not liking. There's a few particular reasons why, but let's continue with the plot a little bit to get you guys up to speed. I'm about 26% probably into it. Troy is going through a lot. He is closeted. He was in a secret relationship with this pretty big super like mega superhero star or whatever on a TV show that was very famous. They broke up when all this stuff dropped, when he called out his used to be best friend, or what he thought would once be his best friend, for sexual assault towards him, but towards like a bunch of girls who are coming forward about it. And so yeah, so that's kind of where that comes in. And then we also have Harris. Harris is their PR person, and this is where things get a little weird for me. This is where things start to get a little muddled, I guess. The point of role model, the reason why the title is there is to present Troy, who is very hated in the world right now because he stood up to this. And everybody in hockey's like, you can't talk about this. This cannot be stood up to. And so he's basically on a really, really far down part. And the team Ottawa, which is where he got transferred over to, or he chose to get transferred over to, I can't really tell, is like one of the worst teams, I guess, in the league. It's just so funny because of like everything else. With this, we have Harris, who's trying to get him to open up, trying to get him to smile, trying to get him to do all these things. He's also finding him extremely attractive, and so his sequences are kind of uncomfortable because of the power dynamic that is presented here. Harris is not like a part of the team. It's not like a coach talking down to a player or having sex with a player. But there is something about the fact that like he holds a lot of power inside today's society, and it's just rubbing me the wrong way for some reason. I'm also like in a really off mood today, so it could just simply be that. I might not have any problems with it tomorrow. I thought their dynamic is kind of cute. For this to be a medium-paced romance so far, it's a very slow-paced romance. They have very little looked at each other. Like, they thought about each other quite a bit. They're constantly thinking about one another, but they're not doing anything. They're not talking about it. They're not doing anything whatsoever. So I think it's just kind of like important to keep in mind, is that's something you're interested. This is definitely like a slow burn romance, in my opinion. I would say it's much more slow burn than anything else. I also, it's really heavy. It's a lot, and I just kind of wanted something a little bit lighter and a little bit funner. And this book is the definition of the opposite of that. This is not fun or light or anything. And I felt like the other two were kind of lighter. I don't know, there was like a peacefulness to them, and this book it's just kind of lost it. They have a great, like I said, they have a lot of chemistry, and I'm curious to see where they go. I like Harris's family, met them. I have a feeling Troy's gonna get taken in by them. Troy's family's horrible. We met them, and that's where I'm at, but I'm not blown away. I'm gonna try to make some great progress on it tomorrow, though. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about common goal, or no, role model. which was the 5th book in Game Changer series. I came in, I did a little bit of an update, and then I read the rest of it today. Mostly because I have another book I had to read, and so I didn't have time to like come in here and do as many thorough check-ins as I would probably prefer for a video like this. With this book, I had a lot of mixed thoughts and opinions on it. I'm gonna be honest with you. I landed on a 4, and I do think a 4 in my book for this particular novel and for what it's about, I think it's actually very strong. This is mostly just due to the fact that like I had a lot of issues with the main relationship for parts of the book. I loved them for other parts of the book. There's a lot of softer moments between Troy and Harris that I really enjoyed. I also like the fact this book did not have a breakup in it. They did kind of get off. There's a lot of back and forth, I guess, between one another. Let me see if I can go through the story points for you the best I can. I don't remember where we left off, so we're just going to start where I can talk. Harris and Troy, like I said, they end up meeting and being with one another, or they end up meeting and being pleasant with one another pretty early on, and then they start kind of like a trend where Troy would bring him coffee. And then Harris would talk to him a little bit about his job, and Troy would bring him coffee. And honestly, the big standout for me out of this entire thing was how close they were getting. It was a lot of softer moments. However, Troy as the main character was extremely frustrating to read from. I'm just going to be completely fair with you. Like, he was one of the more infuriating MCs that I think I've read from, because it was so frustrating. It was so frustrating. And you have Harris, who's like so open and so inviting, which is super good. And one of the big things that is talked about in this novel is the fact that Harris is such a giver. He gives so much of his life and who he is inside and everything to other people, that when Harris, like, one of the things Troy wants to get back is like to allow him not to feel that way. And I don't actually know, in my opinion, if that is ever truly given. Like, in a sexual way, I do believe that he just treat him exactly the way it goes. This is rough play, this is rough sex, and that's exactly what Harris is looking for. Harris had some heart conditions growing up, and so he's had heart conditions that continue to follow him, and so he's always been treated like a baby. He's always been treated like as if he's broken or something. And so taking this like away from him and allowing, like, you know, this man to just do whatever this man wants or whatever is really freeing for him. And so in ways that is like pleasing him, right? Emotional baggage, it just is not really taken off. Other things, other traits that like Troy has. Troy once again is going through this very interesting up and down rise of his career. We start the book out with him calling out someone as a rapist, and the story continues from there. They end up into a fight on the ring at one point, and we also have Iliad, who is a big character in this book, who I fucking adored. Oh my god, I loved him so much. Like, I loved him so much. And I know there's certain things that will be talked about. I'm assuming that this book takes like place in between Long Game, because from what I understand, the Kyle, or I can't remember his name, the asshole who sexually assaulted a bunch of people and was a pretty big asshole throughout most of these, is another character that's in that one, and he just literally just got like arrested at the end of this book. And so I can't only imagine that there's like some back and forth going on in the Long Game. I do wonder what about. Shane's not really a character here, but Shane's been a character in other books, so it's not that big of a thing. And it does make sense that they are the ones that get a second book. However, I feel like making a trilogy out of them is a little weird for me. I honestly don't know how I feel about couples getting sequels in companion books. I say this as I think there's in certain ways I think it really works. Like, if it's a second chance romance and you're doing a companion and the two main characters seem like they have a lot of chemistry in that first book, but they don't actually like really end up together, and then they end up together in like 3 books down the line, but it's from a different person's like point of view. I think that could be like really fun, but I don't know how I feel, so I'll let you know like as I read the Long Game how I feel about it. With that being said, with this one, Iliad ends up getting into a fight with this man as well, Kent, we'll call him, and Troy ends up getting into a little fight with him as well. I don't know, he also tells, Iliad is the first person he tells that he's gay, which is so funny to me, and his reaction is so cute, and he's like so supportive of Harris. This entire team is so supportive, and that's also the other thing, is that like the like higher ups in hockey are coming down on Troy, being like, you need to stop talking about this, stop posting about victims and all this other stuff. It's bad, adding like a bad name to hockey, and you're ruining something that everybody like loves. It's gonna be your fault if hockey dies, essentially. And his coach is like, fuck him, continue what you're doing. He's a fucking asshole. And I just kind of love that. And I don't really think we have enough teams like that. We've been in a lot of situations where the teams are not really like that, unless they're directly connected to somebody else that had formed a team like that. Troy coming out as gay towards the end of the book also makes a lot of sense. He did it at a Pride event. He was very vocal about it. He posted about it on social media, which was nice. It was smaller, but it was good. His stuff with his dad is very chill, but I kind of really like chill by like, I mean, I've seen this in such a more graphic way. So like it's chill to me, but like I think it's really good. I think it's handled pretty well, all things considered. I don't love reading about coming out stories. That's I guess the only thing that like annoys me, because like with Rivalry, they never actually do make their relationship public. They're the only couple in the entire group not to. It's even talked about here. I mean, Iliad practically says that he's bisexual, but in this book. However, it's like never like really like addressed fully. So we're going into another book, which is annoying for me, where we're having characters who are gonna have to face the struggle again. And that's just like, I'm just like kind of over it. I'm gonna find some type of, probably like a hockey romance, to be honest, because I don't mind them. Probably like some type of romance that's gay, where it's not about two people coming out of the closet. Because like I could give two shits. Like, I mean, it's super important. However, at this point, having read so many of these back to back, that I'm like, I have seen it been done, okay? And it's not always been done. Like, I think the intent's really good, and I think there's a lot of emotion behind it. However, just like the conversation right now about queer baiting going on with the Hero Rivalry TV show, women writing gay porn almost feels queer baiting. I said it. And so like there's elements of this book I didn't like. The sex was bad. Was it as bad as the last book? No. But was it bad? Yes. It was objectively bad. That's where I'm at. Did I really talk about the plot about this one? I don't really know. It really is just about him figuring out himself, finding himself, and being a part of this like team, and this team welcoming in. And that's really what the whole point is. And I think it's done well. That's all you really need to know. There isn't like really like a lot of spoilery talk either outside of what we're just discussing, which is really just like the relationship. That's the spoilerly talk of it all. And so that's all you really need to know. Oh my god, what is it called? Oh my god, it's the 6th book. It's the final book in this fucking series. Well, I'll review the new one when it comes out in September, but as of right now, it's the, And let's talk about it, because I just feel like we should talk about it. I'm 56% into it, and for the first 30%, I hated it. Then around the 20% mark, or somewhere around there, I started to really like it. So here's the thing. The big thing here is that I just came to realization that all these books are very similar in plot. The only difference here is that this is an established couple, and every other couple has made their grand debut into society, one could say, except for them. They have certain reasons and stuff for not doing it, but I just feel like they've been together for 10 years at this point. It's not like this is like a shocking thing. And anybody who like they slightly talk to about one another can basically tell they're like fucking. But we gotta talk about both characters individually, because there's one character that's fucking phenomenal here, and there's one character that's absolute trash, and I just can't get over it. I want to talk about sex. So if that makes you uncomfortable, it's the wrong video, but we'll talk about it here in a second. Because this did kind of answer a certain, like if there were going to be some lines, I'm sure Iliad might bottom at some point, but as of right now, we have some lines in the sand when it comes to sex stuff. So let's kind of talk about this. So we have Shane and we have Iliad. I'll start with Iliad because I like him better. He's my little golden retriever that just needs a kind hug and a better boyfriend. I've never thought like a couple should break up more, which is crazy because this is the first couple in the series that I felt like they should be together. And now we come back 10 years later and Shane's acting like a 19-year-old and Iliad's like acting like a 30-year-old. Like he has the maturity, the nuance to understand things, whereas Shane still does not. Some interesting things are going on here. They're talking about relationships on a pretty deeper scale. The only problem here is it doesn't feel like it's been 10 years. I think the funnest part of this book so far are the cameos and figuring out where I can tell you to read these books. As I officially decided on a reading order for these, it does not matter how this ends. I officially decided a reading order. There would be spoilers for each book, but they're romances. So my thought process, if you don't think it ends with a happy ever after, what are you reading? I mean, not every book does, but like these are pretty well. I feel like you're going to pick these up and expect a HEA in the end, in my opinion. However, I do have a reading order. Back to Iliad, though. His journey in this book is he's past the long game. He's done. He's ready to give up hockey. He's ready to give everything up for this boy. He doesn't want to quit hockey per se. He's kind of finding a ground, and I know he's about to find a bigger ground. And I guess that's also kind of like where the problem comes in, which we'll talk about a little bit as well with other books. And this book being in the middle of several books, it makes some of the reveals that are coming, and it's going to be fun to see it from their perspective and what they think during a situation, especially like the plane situation, which we'll talk about. I'm not there yet, and I was hoping that it was popping up before the 70% mark. I have a feeling maybe this is our workaround from like a breakup. There's so much imagery of suicide in this book as well. So Iliad's journey is he's done. He's ready to come out of this long game. He wants to be with his boyfriend. He's part of the reason why they're getting into so much trouble. He's very reckless when it comes to the relationship because he doesn't give a fuck anymore. He doesn't see a point. He doesn't care if the league like tortures him. Now, there are certain aspects that he does care about. One of those aspects is he does not want to go back to Russia, and he's afraid that if he is outed as bisexual, that if he does go back to Russia, he'll be lynched and killed, understandably so. But he does have options. He can get a different job. They don't believe hockey would just like tell them no, but it's a possibility. And another one is like they could get married and they could just like live off their money because they are like millionaires. So it's not like they don't have options. That's his whole journey. Shane's whole journey is ignoring the fact that Iliad is like going through something so depressing. He is so sad. And he's dealing with all these big emotions. He doesn't know how to talk to Shane. Anytime he tries to talk to Shane about this, Shane acts like a fucking 2-year-old tantrum, and it's pissing me off. There are so many interactions with Shane in this book that it just make me mad. Like to the point where I'm like trying to figure out the motivation, and I cannot, except for the fact that we need an antagonist, and I think it's Shane. He's very much there for the sex. He wants it to feel exactly like it did 10 years ago, and he just wants to continue for it to feel like 10 years ago. He doesn't want it to evolve into anything more serious. He won't put any pictures up. He won't go out with friends. But this is the thing. He expects him to do these things. I think that's the part that's like very frustrating about their relationship, is that as Iliad is deciding to go to therapy to work on these problems for Shane, to get better for the person that he is madly in love with, the therapist is like, yeah, but like, what did he take away? Like, what did he make you not love anymore? Like, why are you so depressed and you weren't really that depressed like 4 years ago? And he's like, well, I had this like amazing car collection and he didn't like it, so I got rid of it. I also had like all these amazing fuck buddies. He didn't like them. I got rid of them, which they agreed on. There's a whole sequence about it. It's beautiful. Biggest thing here is that, like, for instance, Shane has this huge support group. He might not think it's huge, but it is very big. We have Rose Larkin. We have his parents. We have his best friend. They all know about the relationship. He can actively talk about the relationship. He can actively discuss the relationship. And Illy does not have anybody except for Shane's parents. He's not allowed to come out to anybody. A strict rule by Shane that's enforced over and over again. He wants to tell his teammates. He wants to become closer. You can feel his drive for hockey going away because of this. And there's just so many little moments that just make me so sad. And I just wish that Shane, like there's a moment where, like, in the last book, like, I loved Illy so much in the last book, and I was so excited for this book because of that. I was wondering where it was going to take place in events. Troy shows up probably 40% into the book, maybe 45% in the book, is when Troy gets drafted over into their team, and by this point he's out to Troy. And I loved that sequence so much in the previous book where they came out to each other and the bond that started between them. Shane's initial reaction is, oh my god, you want to fuck Troy? Troy's a horrible dude. What are you doing? Like, why are you telling me secrets? This makes no sense to me. And now they're fighting on Christmas is where I'm leaving off. They're currently in a fight because Elliot doesn't feel comfortable talking about his feelings with Shane because Shane's not doing anything to prove that he can talk about his feelings. And it's just one of the most frustrating things. Not like a miscommunication, because there are obvious things that they are keeping from one another that I do think they talked about it maybe would make it better. But Shane's having such visceral, horrible reactions that I also don't know if that's the case. Like, I can't confidently sit here and be like, no, he's going to react beautifully to all these confessions. Because I don't think so. Like, this is the first book where I'm like, maybe you guys don't deserve each other in the end. And everybody else is reading this and giving it like 5 to 6 stars. Like, 6 stars is like the best book of all time, right? And I'm like sitting here on the verge of like a 2.5 or a 2.25. Like the lowest rated out of the entire series. And everybody talked about how bad this was. Like, online, the reception was trash. But Goodreads, the reception is amazing. I could not find a single bad review. It's below like a 4. And I was like, what the fuck? Am I not just reading it okay? And maybe it's just all about the journey, and maybe I'll get like blown away. But I do know that they're gonna retcon something in here because there's a fucking third one. Yeah, moving on to the sexual vows. They both have longer hair in this book, and the way Shane talks when he bottoms is so, I mean, I'm not bottom shaming, so if you talk this way, good for you. But in my opinion, it's just so not the way I would feel like a bottom would talk. And it's so distracting that it just feels like it's like you could replace a woman with Shane in these sequences, and outside of like a few jerk off moments or whatever where it requires his penis to be involved, it's like nothing else, and that's really distracting. Let's talk a little bit about cameos though, because I do think cameos is super fun. So Fabian and, oh my god, I can't think of his name, it starts with an R, Ryan. Ryan is the first person to know that they're together who's in the hockey world. He's really like shy about it. That's pretty much that's self-explanatory when it comes to Ryan. I mean, Ryan and Fabian, they play a pretty big part in the beginning of this book. They control several of the lines of narrative and stuff, and I really liked like how a lot of it played out. I'm not gonna lie to you. I think it worked really well. I like the characters. I didn't really like Fabian here though. I do think it was somewhat of a character assassination for a really okay. Like he was a fine character in his book, but I felt like he had a bit more charm. I don't know. There's something about it here that read wrong. And then they've made mentions, like obviously Shane is in this book, not Shane, Scott's in this book. He's briefly mentioned, he's not like a big part of it. And so, but Scott and Kip were like big part of the last book. I don't really see them being a big part here. There's like 6 of these. So Troy's not next. There's like one in between. Oh, the older one. Yeah, he's not been mentioned. They've not been mentioned. There's like a slight mention of the bar because they own the bar, but that's like about it. That's like the only thing. But it's not like really talked about. We obviously have Troy, and Troy is becoming a bigger part. And I really like Troy by the end of the book. I thought Troy was a little annoying in the beginning. The quality somewhat of Shane, especially because he had such not a golden retriever, and I just want to protect him with my entire heart. And so I really liked Harris, but I also like Harris here. I think Harris is cute in both. However, I don't like the depiction of PR management in these books. I think they're really not good, especially for the LGBT community. I think there's not a lot of restraint with Harris, and there's not a lot of restraint in the Ottawa place. And I think there's some bits of conversation that I think are played out to just be like a funny moment that is actually kind of detrimental. So I don't like that. I didn't like it in the last book. And it does carry over to the small scenes that Harris has had here. However, Iliad like with the puppy is so cute. Iliad with Troy is so cute. And so yeah, Shane's just like really pissing me off 56% into this thing. I'm like genuinely mad. I'll update you as I go through the rest of the book. I don't know if I'll finish it before Wednesday or not. I don't know how much reading I'll get done over the weekend. This is where we went off. I am now 70% into it, and I figured I'd give you guys another little check-in. The last one was kind of long, so I don't know if this is going to be this long, but with the long game, Shane and Iliad are still pissing me off. Hold on one second. So these are 2 characters that are still like frustrating me, like to no avail, but like really frustrating me. Like it's kind of ridiculous how much they frustrate me. Iliad not so much. He's a sweet little angel, can't do no wrong. Shane on the other hand is pissing me the fuck off. He has gotten a little bit better. So essentially what I thought was gonna happen did happen. They get into a fight based on all these things. Shane realizes he fucked up. Iliad is honest with him for the first time in a long time on how he feels and how he has no one. And Shane's answer is, well, you have my parents, you have all these other people that are my friends, that are my thing. And then Iliad asks Shane, or Iliad asks Shane, I'm gonna say his name wrong this entire time, so I'm gonna get pissed, I'm so sorry. It's the first time I apologized to her too. I'm going to apologize early on, but I forgot. He asked Shane, would you give up hockey for me? And Shane gives a questionable yes. And then he asks Illy, and Illy says, I already did. Or, like, I gave up everything for you. Or something along those lines. And then he, forces Shane out. And he talks to his therapist about it. His therapist says, okay, you guys need to have, like, a real fucking conversation. And he's like, yeah, I know, but I'm just, like, scared. My poor baby. And then we have Shane, who's coming down to the realization that he did, like, really fuck up. And that it is really his fault. And which is great. I love those moments. To the point where they're engaged now. There was a little, okay, let's put an asterisk here. We forgot the big thing, which is the plane wreck. Plane crash was in the last book. I think I mentioned it, or if I didn't mention it, it's kind of crazy. It's like the big 3rd act thing. It's also how they got around doing a 3rd act breakup in the last book. And this is, I think, how we're getting around a 3rd act breakup in this book. However, we're 70% in. Do you understand how scary that is? Like, I was expecting us to be like 90 or 85% in. And now we have 30 more percent of this book. And I don't like that. I don't like that at all. But they had the plane crash. It happened. I mean, I guess, so there's some other stuff going on as well. They get in the plane crash and Shane really realizes, oh my god, I need to, like, I don't care anymore. This is no longer a long game. This is how can we become besties forever, And so he proposes, they say yes, whole 9 yards, they're now engaged. And they have officially decided that in summer, no matter what the consequences are, they don't give a fuck. They're coming out and they're gonna get married and it's gonna be a whole thing. So, now we're building up to that. I left off somewhere, they're like having sex, I think is where I left off. I think it's like somewhere after that. We still have the Pride event to go through. We also have learned that Troy got the call saying you need to stop talking about sexual assault, which we've already talked about. And also with Shane getting, did I tell you about Shane going and meeting the fucking jackass and said don't come out of the closet? That was crazy. I don't think I talked about it. Same dude. And so now they're like, I think that's even more incentive for them to do it because they want to prove to hockey and this person who's like in the top part of hockey or in this world that love prevails or some shit. And I like that. So I'm hoping my goal for the rest of the book, I think I'll rate it high, even though I did not like the first 30%. I think the rest of it, it's very good. Okay, still very frustrating, but very good in like a good way. I think I'd rate it high if there is no 3rd act breakup. I don't need a moment where they call off the wedding. I don't need a moment where they call off the engagement. I need them to talk like adults. There's like certain requirements because right now Shane's acting like a 12-year-old and Illy is acting like a 30-year-old. And I think they both need to get on the same age. And when they do, I think the relationship can like truly happen. So those are my goals for the rest of this book. I'll come in and update you when I finish it. And let me know in the comments down below. Do you guys like the more single book review where I'm just like talking about it? Or do you like this? Because I kind of like this more. I have like so many more thoughts and opinions. I enjoy talking to you about them. So yeah, okay, that's my plan. Let's go ahead and close out this video for the Game Changer series by Rachel Reed. And my final update for the long game, we'll talk about the order I think you should read them in my opinion, on the newest release as well. Are all going to be wrapped up right here, so let's start with the long game. I'll tell you my rating at the end. Let's go through some plot details. So the big thing with the final third that we need to talk about, there's a few like interesting updates. I think some we've already known. Troy and Harris are moving in together. That was like the big thing. We could see a little bit of their relationship after the fact, how well they're accepted and stuff. It's also revealed that they are outed, Shane and Ilya, before the like game is over. And I have some issues with this and a little like just like everybody else gets this perfect coming out moment and they don't. And I don't know if they're the couple for this to be like a factor. I don't know if there's like a different one. I feel like, I don't know, because it's such a high stakes thing and it's such a very personable thing. And it's such an interesting, like they joke about it and they talk about it or whatever. I think maybe Kyle and Eric, is it Eric? Maybe they should. I don't want to out anybody. I don't think that should be a trope that's being used. But I feel like maybe they're the couple to use it because he's already out of the league or he's already leaving the league. And I think it would have made more sense. He was pretty open about it as well. So I don't really think it would have been that much of a shocker. Illy is a sweet little baby. He is until the very end of the novel. They do end up getting married. They do end up all doing all these things. They are confronted by the head guy, just like Troy was, just like Jane was early on. He basically said, "You need to squash this. We're gonna tell it was, it was like a prank or something. Boys being boys." And they said, "Nah, fuck you," and left. And they continued working in the league because Shane recorded it because he was very which was interesting. They didn't really do anything with that. I have a feeling that's what the next plot's about. And we'll talk about teaming up gays in a second because I find it interesting. In a lot of ways, I do feel like this is a conclusion. I don't really know if the third book is necessary or the continuation of this series. I have a lot of thoughts and opinions on this idea of coming out and making a big deal and making change in a very like male-dominated sport and a very male-dominated fan base and what those would look like. And I do like how it's both realistic and unrealistic. However, I still end up hating it from a female perspective. There's just something that loses a little bit for me because it's not written by a gay man. I know that's like I'm sure it's gonna be controversial. I'm sure people are being mad at them even bringing it up again. But with the third book being all about this like support and changing the system and changing this thing, which was what it seems like. And also, I don't really know if they need a third book because they didn't have a breakup moment in this book. I don't think they need one. I don't think they need a conflict. And I didn't like Shane here, so I don't even know if I want to read it with the off chance that Shane's going to be annoying. Or if Elliot is like atrocious to read from, I don't want to read that either because I don't want him to be ruined as a character. We also get a dog, which is really, really cute. Mentioned quite a bit. I really enjoyed the little doggy. I think it makes a lot of sense. He's such a puppy lover. Yeah, I landed on 4.25. I'm trying to think of any other big moments. I'm sure other people are. I finished it a few days ago. My brain's a little blanking. Sorry, I haven't really had time to sit down to film this. Yeah, that's where I'm at. I really enjoyed the book. I liked it by the end. I feel like the first like third was pretty bad. Or not bad, but like I just had a lot of issues with it. So let's talk about book 7 real quick. What will I be doing? I probably will put it in a sequels video where I read sequels and we spoil books and like the sequels of books and stuff. I'll probably do that is my best guess because that makes logical sense to me. Maybe it'll be more romance adjourned sequels or something. I don't know. I have a few on my list that I really want to read that I wouldn't mind being more spoilery with. I wouldn't be surprised if you see it in like that extent because I would like to talk spoilers as I've talked about the entire series with spoilers. The actual concept, I'm not really sure how much I enjoy. I think the whole intent behind it is so beautiful. So I'm just going to be happy about it. I'm just going to be happy that they're doing this thing. I'm curious to see what it's going to be like. I'm curious to see what the stakes are like. I am a little curious about all those things. And I do know that she said it ends in a way that you don't have to, like, there could be more, but there's not going to be more. And so if they do end up getting a kid by the end of this next one, I don't think their story can really continue as fathers, is what they're trying to do. I also don't want a conflict with a family. I don't know, we're playing some fragile lines here. And I've already felt like Rachel as a person some of the things we talked about throughout this video, I still stand by. I do think she's gotten much better. I think these are much better books. So let's go into a ranking order. In my opinion, you can just read Heated Rivalry, and you can also just read Long Game. If you just want to read the two of those, you totally can. You don't have to read anything else. I'd honestly probably recommend reading Heated Rivalry and maybe the Long Game. So the only thing here is, because this would probably be like in a non-spoilery sense, right? Heated Rivalry and the Long Game do contain major spoilers for every book that it's in between. So you do get spoilers for every couple. However, these are romance novels, and so thinking that they're not going to end up together is kind of crazy on your half. I think some of the books do a pretty good job of like selling it, and some of the books don't do a great job selling it. So it's really up to you. In my opinion, the books you can skip are, I guess, the first one, Game Changer. Particularly for me, I hated it. Even fondly looking back, I think I would even rate it lower than I rated it, especially after all this. I do really like Kyle's book, which I just mentioned, which is, I think it's Eric. I think it's Eric and Kyle. I could be wrong. I really enjoyed them. I ended up really liking Choi's book by the end as well. That's book 4 and 5, I think. Fabian in Ryan's book is fine, but it's not like one of my favorites in the world. However, I will have to say, if you do read Choi's book, there are some major development spoilers for this one that do, like, they correspond, they're working in tandem with one another. So it's almost like, I don't know how you would read it in tandem, but I would say you would need to read it in tandem. It's the only book in the series I would say you probably should read together if you do end up reading Choi's book, because there's some weird spoilers you're like, that shouldn't matter. And it does matter pretty much. There's a few, like, huge plot threads that are dependent on his relationship with other people in that book as well, Ilya's. It's almost like a huge spoiler for like some big developments. Also, it kind of takes away a lot of the stakes from the Long Game, in my opinion. It's some interesting resolutions, though, to be fair, and I like some of the developments also. So it's interesting, but just something to keep in mind. Overall, that's the Game Changer series. I think I'm landing on a 4 overall for the series, even though the first book was really, really bad. But I think everything else had a 4. No, I think one of them had a 3.75. So, but I still think it's a 4. I just think it's on the low range of 4 overall series captures. But yeah, alright, thank you guys for watching, and I'll talk to you all next time.